Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Govs on the Go Alumni Edition, a podcast featuring alumni from the College of Arts and Letters here at Austin Peay State University. My name is Dr. Buzz Hoon. I'm the host of the podcast. I'm also the dean of the college. And today I'm talking with Ron Carter from the class of 1988. And Ron, you were both a political science and history major. And since you were a history major, we are claiming you for our college. Welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you so much, and I'm happy to be claimed.
Well, let's give everybody a life update. Where are you? What's going on in life?
I live in Goodlettsville. I grew up in Goodlettsville, went to Goodlettsville High School and elementary school and First Baptist Church just down the street. I've lived all over. I've lived on both coasts, in several states in between and overseas. So I've had a pretty active life. But this is home, and have been here for a while. In terms of my work, my profession, I'm semi-retired. I'm retired as a federal employee, as also as a Marine officer, and I'm able to. I still work, but I get to pick and choose the projects that I work on now, and determine more. It's less the have to now in work, and a little bit more the want to. And where I can, maybe add the most impact, bring the most value, and also maybe to, have the most fun. Like to find challenging things that I think I can bring value to. So that's what I do.
Great. We're going to get into not only your career, but also your experiences at Austin Peay. But let's begin at the beginning and growing up in Goodlettsville and your family, because I think that they had a special impact on you. Can you talk about how that helped your development?
You bet. Anyone who's not well grounded in their family, I think that maybe that would be a first place that they would want to spend some time. Your academic studies matter, but the world, my big takeaway is that connection is the kind of the long and the short of it. It's the alpha and omega, if you will. And the stronger family ties you have, the stronger friendships you have, relationships with professors, it's all about connecting and how well do you connect. Because, even if you're a genius and you can't make connection to pass your ideas along, to collaborate with other people well, then those ideas are going to get lost, or they're not going to be as effective as they might otherwise be. So connection is really important. Family really matters. And I grew up in a strong nuclear family. My dad was a, traditional, primary breadwinner. He also worked in a non-traditional industry as a musician. So I grew up in it was different. My dad wasn't an 8 to 5, guy with benefits. His profession was an all hands effort. He was a virtuoso musician. He owned his own studio for a long time. So I got a very unique education there because music is a second language. So maybe I learned a few things in connection there, as well as got an eye on business that maybe some people don't see. But yeah, your faith and your family are the things that are going to get you through, your connections with other people. And those are places that I think that you should always concentrate.
You kind of touched on that just a moment there, Ron, where you said that both music and your family and the business all kind of were part of your growing up. I know that you were exposed to a lot of celebrities over that period of time because your dad, that was part of what his business was, and you had to learn how to effectively, make sure that he didn't miss anything.
I did, from an early age. My dad was an interesting guy, and the bar was set very high for him. And one of the things that I learned is that you never do anything to get in the way of your own professionalism or to undermine yourself professionally. Integrity is everything, and he lived by that, and I saw the dividends that paid. So for students out there who might be watching, your word means everything. If you say you're going to do something, you need to do it. And, you need to show up on time and to be prepared. And it's amazing how much further ahead of the rest of the world, or your competition, if you will, you'll be if you simply observe those basics. You keep your word. You don't talk poorly of other people. My dad never participated in any of that water cooler talk, things like that. But, we were taught professionalism, and it was an all hands effort. So I think I've shared the story with you privately already of just what it was like to be a 10-year-old and to answer the phone in my house. And, I answer the phone, and the voice on the other end is Chet Atkins. And can I speak to your father, please, or your mom? And, Mr. Atkins, my parents aren't here right now. And, well, if you could have them call me, please, I'd like to book your daddy for some sessions. Well, sir, I have my father's day planner right here. When did you need him? And of course, I hear the pregnant pause on the other end of the line, because he understands he's talking to a kid. And he says, you know how to keep your father's book? And I said, yes, sir, I do. When did you need him? He says, well, can you tell me if he's available on the 11th and the 12th? Yes, sir, he is. What time did you need him? Well, if he could show up at 10 and 2 on the 11th and 12th, that'd be great. Yes, sir. What instruments does he need to bring? Well, if he'd bring his gut string and his mandolin, we could use those. Which studio does he need to show up to, Mr. Atkins? Well, I usually work out of RCA. So if he could show up at RCA, that'd be great. Okay, Mr. Atkins, I have Dad booked at the 11th and 12th with his gut string and his mandolin. Will be at RCA at 10 and 2. Is there anything else I can help you with? And he starts laughing, and he says, no, he's got the incredulous laugh going on. He said, no, I appreciate it. I look forward to seeing your daddy next week. And so that was the way it worked. Now you fast forward, I was about 17. So my dad's business was by the phone, because he was a session musician, right? He was part of the Nashville A team. If anyone knows, cares to look up what that is. And I was shooting basketball out in the driveway, and all of a sudden I see the business face come out the sliding glass door, and it's making a beeline for me, and it's not the happy face. And this was an unmistakable face, right? And one you wanted to stay away from. And he approached me, and he says, hey, did so-and-so call me last week? And I stopped. And you know how you go through your mind, you're going through the files, what happened. And all of a sudden my eyes lit up, and I didn't have to say a word. We connected, and someone had called to book him for a session. And I had not written it down. I couldn't actually put it in the book. They needed him to call in this instance, and I didn't write it down. And he looked at me, and he said, you just cost us groceries for a month, and turned around and walked off. That's the only call I ever missed. And I still remember it. And so you really have to be on your game, because what you do affects everyone around you, whether it's your family, your friends, professional colleagues. You really have to learn how to be on your game. And so that would be another takeaway for students here. If you haven't upped your game, then you really need to. And if you're going to be particularly eclectic, in how you want to live your life, to be an individual, you have to be even that much better at your profession. And I'll give you an example. I did an addition on my house about 15 years ago. And this was at a time when we had an economic downturn, and the market was off. So I had access. I asked around for recommendations for somebody to do the foundation for the extension on the house, because I was serving as my own general contractor. And I got a recommendation for a guy, and they said, look, don't pay any attention to how he looks. He's the best you'll find. And when he showed up, he looked like Jesse James or somebody. He was tattooed from head to toe and pierced, and the whole 9 yards. But he worked with the best businesses in Nashville, specifically with people that you would never think that he would associate with, because he was simply that good at his job, and he took it that seriously. So what he did in his private life or whatever, he kept that to himself. But when he showed up as a pro. He didn't show up as a rugged individualist. And he was fantastic. He worked quickly. He gave great advice. And I would hire that guy again in a heartbeat. And So that would be another takeaway for students.
Yeah, that's terrific. And, one of the things besides your family that was a major influence on you, Ron, you mentioned that you had a super group of friends that were, which is a great part of your development.
Well, I appreciate that. And part of that's just God taking care of me, I think. And, we all have fortuitous circumstances. And I was very lucky in the community that I was raised in Goodlettsville. We still had a community high school then. Families were much more involved. Parents were much more involved with the, school administration and support of different organizations within the school, whether it was the band, the football team, or the cheerleaders, or the science clubs, or whatever. They were much more involved, I think, than many parents are today. But I fell in with a group of friends. I'm currently 59. My oldest friend I met when I was 3 years old in church. So I've known Harold Brewer, who is an aerospace engineer, graduated Tennessee Tech. I've known that guy for 56 years. And then I had a couple other friends that I met at the same time, or not at the same time, but when I was in the elementary school. And the four of us grew into a very determined friendship that's lasted for a lifetime. And I'm still close to those guys. And every one of them, it doesn't matter how long it is between personal visits. It's always like it's a fresh conversation where we just pick up where we left off. And, that kind of connection and support from people that and can respect, they're solid citizens. They get up and work every day. They pay their taxes, but they're also extremely bright, and they try to do the right thing every day for no other reason than that's simply what you do. They are bedrocks in their churches, their communities, but they never lost their sense of humor or their willingness to learn. So they're constantly, they're kind of like what I call myself. I'm a perpetual student, love to learn. My curiosity never dies. So I will just ruin you with questions. I'll just wear you right into the ground, because you're never too old to learn something new. But those friends were instrumental for me. They were great.
What a blessing. What a blessing. So you managed, after graduation, you took a little detour, and let's talk about your time at Austin Peay, because I think that, like many things in your life, once you came here and you got committed, you were 100%. You seem like 100% type of guy.
Yes. It's important to know yourself. And I think everyone has a unique journey, but the most profound journey is the journey with yourself. And so for those who follow such things in a Myers-Briggs, I'm an INTJ, which is a very rare personality type. I didn't have the tools at my disposal to understand what an INTJ was, even though I was tested when I was at Austin Peay. And, I've still got the original test. But I was so introverted. I'm just a weird combination of introverted, but somehow or another speaking up. And I had to really spend a lot of time getting past my own, just getting past myself in terms of my social interaction. It's not that I didn't have friends or I didn't have fun or things like that, but there were some things that I just didn't want to do, or I was just frightened by it. But I still found a little courage somewhere where I understood that I had to grow, and there was only one way to do that. In my background here, you can see my gym, and this is a legit gym, and this is where I have spent a lot of time and still do. I'll be 60 in January, and I can still run a high first class fitness test for the Marine Corps. The part that people don't see is the lonely sweat equity where you're doing the hard work.
That's right.
No one else can run your 3 miles for you. No one else can get on the chin bar. No one else is going to feel the creaks and the aches of whatever, if you've stressed a tendon or something like that, or twisted your knee a little bit, and to figure out how you're going to get that done. All of that's done in silence. When when you're watching the Olympics, an overwhelming number of those athletes, they have toiled in silence and, by themselves. They get up at 5 a.m., 4 a.m., and they go do what has to be done when it's lonely and everybody is still in bed, whether it's foggy, it's rainy, or whatever. And so, yeah, I definitely made that commitment. But I was sitting in some of these things, they just kind of happen. I was sitting in a speech class with Dr. Jerry Butler, who was brand new at Austin Peay. And it was a required course, right? And I was sitting in the front row, and for whatever reason, I was in rare form that day. And I had the class in completely broken up in stitches. And this was over in Traherne. I think it was in the main auditorium there. So it's kind of stadium seating. So I was down front. She was on the stage, elevated a little bit. And when we were dismissing class after she had passed out the syllabus and given us, opening remarks, she said, "Not only am I the new speech professor at Austin Peay, but I'm also the new debate and forensics coach. Before class today, I needed 4 people for the debate team, but now I only need 3," as she tilted her head and gave me a very knowing look. And this is kind of, I don't know if this is instructive or not. This is something that I'd always been interested to do, but I just didn't have the confidence to do it in my own voice, right? To be that public. And the fact that I essentially got volunteered, I didn't push back, and I did it. And it ended up being a transformative experience for me, despite having no debate experience whatsoever. My debate partner and I, we ended up in the best 50 in the country. We got invited to the national debate tournament out at Colorado Springs, where we went and we competed, and we finished very well out there. And it was instructive, but I didn't volunteer for that. But somehow or another, Providence grabbed me and said, "This is something you need to do." And I didn't shrink from it. I didn't, try to walk away. So students are going to have opportunities that are going to be presented to them. And I am begging them to embrace them, take a chance to fail, because you will benefit from it by putting yourself at risk a little bit and giving people a chance to know you and to warm up to you and to like you.
And that's not the only opportunity you took advantage of. You also you ran a dorm. You also ran intramurals for a time. And all this, what's amazing to me is you came in because you had that background in music, the love of music, but a conversation with Dr. Fott kind of changed your mind.
Well, Dr. Fott didn't change my mind so much. I think I just did my own evaluation. So when I got there, I was a very arrogant freshman, late freshman. And what I didn't know when I talked to Dr. Fott, I was a music major when I arrived, just because I grew up playing music and I didn't know anything else. And that seemed like a natural path for me, and everyone thought I would end up in the music business. But what I didn't know is that Dr. Fott had worked with my dad in Nashville, which he informed me of after I sat down in his office one afternoon. He's really funny. He caught me in the hallways of the music department, and he wagged his finger at me while he was holding his pipe in the other hand. He says, "Be in my office at 4:00 this afternoon." And it was not asking. He was directive. And so I showed up, and we started talking, and he told me that he had worked with my dad. And I think I would be embarrassed if I heard that conversation on a playback now, but it was just interesting to have a professor invite you in, and I could be myself without abrogation whatsoever. He asked me pointed questions. What do you want to do with your life? Where are you going? What's going on? How do you feel about, XYZ? And so that was my first great experience at Austin Peay from the standpoint of I learned that you need to engage your professors. And I did that at every turn. I don't know that they were all very happy with that, because I could be very robust in my engagement with them. Now, I always tried to make it as a personal connection, where it was about essentially the business or the material. So it was not a personal thing with them, but it was a very engaging conversation. And they gave me the freedom to be, the wild young stallion, if you will, to try and find my limits until I, figured out what my place in the world was and how I could more appropriately use my voice instead of just being loud or frustrated or what have you.
So then you decide to be a history major,
Mhm.
and you have Dr. Wallace as who was, I think you said, the chair of the department at the time.
She wasn't the chair,
Okay.
but she was so I got connected with Dr. Wallace through a friend of mine, Jennifer Brown, who was on the basketball team at Austin Peay. She and I had been in high school together. She's one of the smartest people that I've ever known. And she's like a sister to me. We've been lifelong friends. I knew her from actually from kindergarten all the way through until today. We're still very close. And but she was already at Austin Peay, and I didn't know how to sign up for classes or anything. So I was over to her parents' house one night, and we had the handbook out, and we were going through the class schedule, and she was showing me how to sign up for classes. And I needed a history class, and she looked at what was available, and she said, "You need to go to Miss Wallace's class." And I said, "Why do you say that?" She said, "I know some people who've had her, and maybe she had a class with her as well." She said, "That's the place you need to be. You'll understand once you get in her class." And when I got there, she was fantastic. She did everything, off the cuff. She knew her material fantastically, but she was not somebody to be trifled with either. But she still had fun with the material, And she ended up being my advisor. And I didn't have a burning passion to be part of. I started to be a business major at one point, but I didn't have a burning passion for that. And I just thought, since I don't know exactly what I want to be, history is a foundational piece. It will inform on every possible thing that I might encounter. So if I have a solid command of history and maybe even political science, which I had an interest in government, but that's all about connection, right? And how the world works. And I'm not so sure if I had it to do over again that I wouldn't have been an economics major, because I didn't understand what the study of econ was at the time. And I understand it now. Economics is actually the study of how things work, to understand how the pieces fit together. And it's very, very interesting. I'm an inventor, tinkerer. I take things apart. I take my cars apart, bumper to bumper, electronics, plumbing, it doesn't matter. I get my hands on things, and I really like to understand how things work. And so those two, as my field of study, they help me understand a lot about the world and how the world has formed over time and how you get to certain places. And that understanding it was harder for me hitting the workforce right after graduation, because it was just a general liberal arts degree. But over the course of my lifetime, it's paid huge dividends, because I understand, I think, more completely how the world actually functions, how people communicate, where they got in trouble. Learning what to do is important. Learning what not to do is just as important, right? And so, I paid attention to those things, and that's and Dr. Wallace and others were very instrumental to help me in that understanding.
One other experience that I want to highlight was that you had an opportunity to be a legislative intern. And I think it was an interesting preview to what you might do in the future. And that was another thing that was, I think, a sort of a spirit-driven, deliverance to help you along the way.
Sure. I had another friend of mine, Carol Norfleet, who was an Austin Peay graduate. She was like a big sister to me, the big sister that I never had. And she was a poli-sci major. And we just hit it off. The Red Barn was under renovation, so our offices got moved down the hill, and kind of a makeshift operation for a little bit. And I don't remember exactly what I think. I think Carol was actually working for the university for admissions and for recruitment at the time. And we were just down the hallway, a lonely hallway from one another. And since we were the only people in the building, we connected, and we quickly hit it off on the political science front. And she had been in the legislative internship program. She turned me on to it. I submitted. I was interviewed by the state legislature and the committee there, and I was selected and got assigned to the House Minority Leader, John Childs, and I worked with all of the Republican leadership as well as the Democratic leadership. But can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. And anyway, long story short, I learned so much there in that connection. And eventually, I've been a political and military person my whole life. I ended up, I got my master's at the Kennedy School at Harvard, and from there, I went to work for Governor Sundquist. Got hired directly by the governor to come work for the state in the mid '90s. From there, I got hired by the White House by President Bush, and was involved in quite a number of interesting things there. I was the 5th employee at Homeland Security and at the Transportation Security Administration. I served as the chief of staff there for the stand-up of TSA, for the task force out of the secretary's office. So yeah, just an innocent conversation, connecting with someone at Austin Peay who was involved or had been involved in something, turned into something much, much greater.
And what I admire about your life story, Ron, is that you just continued to take on challenge after challenge, and you wanted to have that personal growth, which I think was you weren't sure always about where you're going to be headed. Right. But looking back now, it all turns out fine. It's a good story, but at that time you had to take a leap of faith.
You bet. And we never know exactly how things are going to turn out. But the interesting thing for most people is that things usually turn out. And I think it's really important, if you're a young student or you're someone about to graduate, don't discount every experience. You never know how that's going to inform. And I'm also a person of faith, and I do believe that our steps are directed and we receive guidance. Things happen for a reason or they don't. And I'll give one example. My sister's Dina Carter, the country music artist, and when she was trying to break into the business, she had a chance to audition for a backup singer for Reba McEntire. And it came down to Dina and one other young lady, and they really struggled with the decision, but eventually they chose the other person. And Dina was crushed because she thought, this is my one, opportunity. And my father was very instructive to say, Dina, things happen for a reason. Don't question it. You stay in the gym, keep doing your homework, and this will work itself out. Well, you fast forward a couple, 2 or 3 years, and Dina turns on the TV, and an announcement comes across the screen. It says, breaking news. Reba McEntire's airplane has gone down, and it has killed almost every member of her band.
Oh my!
And if Dina had gotten selected, she would have gone down with the plane. There's just no question about that. And my father followed up with her and said, "See, there's a reason. You never know how you touch somebody else's life, and other people don't know how they touch yours. And I think you need to be on the lookout for those things." And every task pays dividends. It doesn't matter how large or small. I worked in the hospitality industry to work my way through Austin Peay and pay my way. And that was not something I necessarily wanted to do. Part of it, I was terrified over, particularly early, to have to interact with customers, things like that. But what I learned in terms of social engagement and how to pick up on, certain social cues, what it meant to be really in service of others, it's paid as many dividends for me as anything else in my life. And I could go on with 1,000 examples of something that I didn't want to do, or I didn't understand, or it seems completely disconnected. And in the end of the day, every one of those experiences adds depth to your experience. So Steve Jobs famously years ago was asked, why do you hire liberal arts majors for what's essentially an engineering firm, a tech company? And he famously did the graph and said, if you plot the life experience of engineers, it's very linear, right? It's thin and it's linear. Liberal arts people have such a wide variety that it adds depth to their experience, which makes them more creative, and it makes them better able to connect with all of our customers or to expand our market. And so, if you're the server at Chick-fil-A, you're going to take certain things away from that if you try to do your job well. So it doesn't matter. Everything you touch, I had an experience in high school that was difficult for me, but it was very helpful. We had a mainstream program at the time where people with certain disabilities were mainstreamed into the school, and I ended up mentoring a couple of students in that program, and it really expanded my awareness of what other people have to deal with, what families endure, and how everyone might be able to contribute or learn or things like that. And I did that for about a year, but it's something that has really paid dividends for me going forward, to be more empathetic with others and to understand how I might modify my approach to things to make sure that I can provide assistance to anybody. And so that was instructive. That list gets boring in a hurry of all of this life experience, but literally everything you touch. One of the examples I've always given is just to get involved. If you take your car to the shop, even if you don't pick up a wrench, if you actually will dare to walk through the shop, you don't touch a wrench, you don't touch the car, just by the fact that you're walking through the garage, the grease you're going to carry some of that away with you. You can't help it. You're going to get grease on your shoes, your hands, your pants, something, but you're going to take a little something away with you. So every experience that you have as a student or a young professional, it doesn't matter what it is, that's going to rub off on you, and you're going to take it with you. And part of your responsibility or the trick is to hang on to it and figure out how you can use that or make it relevant in your experience as you progress.
Well, we could just continue to hear some of this wisdom and advice, and I appreciate you sharing your story, Ron. It's been a very inspirational, and we are definitely proud to have you within the Austin Peay family.
Thank you so much, and welcome to Austin Peay. I know that you've gotten snapped in very quickly. We're very fortunate to have you. And, as always, and I'll say this as an example for anyone who might listen or be interested, it's important to pay it forward. And, I've worked on and off with the university at different times. I worked with President Hoppy in the past on a number of initiatives out of the president's office there. And you and I have become, friends recently. So if there's anything I can do to help advance you or the department or the university in general, I'm always going to take that phone call and try and be available to do that. And it's something that, it's important to enjoy, but even more so, it's just important to pay it forward. And I think if students who hear this will adopt that, they will see huge dividends for it, because we don't get here alone. A lot of people have loved us and supported us or sacrificed for us over time, and it's really important to not lose sight of that, and to make sure that you pay it forward and use that for somebody else's good and advancement. So,
well said. And thanks again for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
And thanks to all of our viewers and listeners out there for checking out the podcast. We hope that you will join us again as we continue to profile some of the outstanding alumni in the College of Arts and Letters here at Austin Peay State University. So until next time, stay safe, take care, and God bless.